Okay, guys, here we are again for some weekend fear mongering for China. Alibaba, recent all time high. Looking at Baidu, had a little dip. Yeah, huge dip. As high as 263, as low as 100. Then we're looking at NIO. Huge dip. No, I was just playing. Long term, huge dip, but it did take a fall from about $5.70 as the high, and then the low about $3 and about 70 cents, I believe. JD looking pretty high, about 40 bucks. And the GXC, which is the China ETF, is looking like it's going to fall. So what all these companies were experiencing was this uptrend in the MACD and this uptrend in the RSI. It took a dip recently, and let's say the coronavirus just got heated in December, okay? Definitely took some time to digest, and now it's getting bad. That's why everyone's making these videos. That's why I got all these videos up here to show you guys. I've been binge watching coronavirus videos, thank you, for the past 48 hours. They just keep updating this shit. People are digesting it. It is Sunday right now. I expect a massive sell-off on Monday. To justify that, we are seeing high levels right now. The market was ramping up. It was running up into the coronavirus. Now, some of these companies definitely weren't planning for it. NIO, I have a theory that they are running paycheck to paycheck, all right? If you guys have ever lived paycheck to paycheck, if one thing goes wrong, if one bill gets missed because you overspent in a different category, such as an unexpected insurance payment, for example, you will trigger a ton of late payments, all right? This is the same as for NIO. NIO didn't expect the coronavirus to reach 1,000 deaths. They didn't expect all of Asia to be shut down and business to be basically halted for 2 weeks. A lot of auto companies are resuming construction this Monday, tomorrow. Now, if that continues any longer, there is going to be huge issues. There's going to be part shortages. No one is planning for this type of stuff. They don't have extra parts on stock just in case an epidemic happens or a pandemic. A lot of these operations, it's kind of operating and priced for perfection. If something happens, then we're going to see an extreme dip. NIO's numbers aren't looking good at all. So this virus and more downward pressure is going to take this to about $2.40, $1.19. A lot of people think I'm wrong, but I think with these external factors and the recent run up, that it is ready to drop a lot, especially because of this MACD on the GXC. There was no coronavirus back over here in 2016. I honestly think it can go back to about $68. So we're looking at a 30% loss. So we're going to look at this MACD and show what happens every time we get a ramp up over here. So it ramps up, it doesn't really tank, ramps up, dips, ramps up and then dips. Ramp up and the dip. Ramp up and the dip. It's really not that hard to see what's about to happen. We're about to get a dip, all right? Now, once it breaks the zero line, it falls extremely fast. I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is a downtrend in the MACD. Hump 1, hump 2, hump 3, tank. All right? Hump 1, hump 2, hump 3, tank. That's what I'm expecting. It's a pattern, guys. This is human psychology. You got to think about this. Coronavirus is setting off the hormones like crazy. Like, people are scared, they're optimistic, they're feeling greedy, they're licking their chops. There's a lot of emotions going on right now. For something that was ramping up in the recent time being, it is ready for a significant drop. And that's just how it works, guys. Let's go over these videos.
The outbreak of the coronavirus across the world. We've brought you ground reports from Wuhan, but now the focus is on one question. Is the coronavirus a biological weapon? The question has been doing the rounds for a while now. It's been on our radars as well. The claim is that the coronavirus is a weapon made by China and that the virus leaked out of a laboratory. So, is it true? Was the coronavirus made in a laboratory? Did someone release it just to cause harm? Now let's begin with a claim. Its origins, British newspaper. The Daily Mail was among the first to report this story. There's a lab in Wuhan, according to reports, which is close to the animal market. The newspaper suggested the virus could have leaked from there. The same report claims that the SARS virus also leaked from a lab in Beijing. Now, another report suggests that this one from the Washington Times takes this theory a step further. It goes on to claim that the coronavirus could have originated in a lab. This story quotes an Israeli biological warfare analyst. More such reports followed, and they only fueled speculation. One such report says that the virus can be traced back to Canada, and that 2 Chinese agents smuggled the coronavirus from Canada to China. At the center of all these claims is the Wuhan National Biosafety Laboratory. It's a level 4 lab. It was built to study diseases like Ebola and SARS. It conducts research on deadly viruses, and it's barely 32 kilometers from the Hunan seafood market, which has been confirmed as the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak in Wuhan. All reports suggest that the virus actually leaks from this facility, this lab. At this point, all such reports are in the realm of conjecture. There is no credible evidence to back them. Several experts have dismissed these claims as misinformation and
You guys see that? Germany infected, 14 infected, Italy infected. We're going to touch on this in a second.
And conspiracy theories. Let's also take these theories one by one. First, did the virus originate from a laboratory? As we said, there is no scientific evidence to prove this. 2 agencies, Center for Disease Control and Prevention and the World Health Organization, are investigating this outbreak. None of them have called the coronavirus a biological attack. They have traced the origin of this virus back to a seafood and animal market in Wuhan, not to a laboratory.
Popular consensus is that it came from a seafood place, leaked from a lab right next to the seafood place. But there are just so many rumors that SARS and the coronavirus are coming from what? A biological warfare weapon. Got leaked on accident. Look at all these countries that are infected with the coronavirus. It's not good. Just one infection can screw up the whole country. And now you got 15 spider webs occurring. If you guys have ever been in sales and are into prospecting, each person you meet is a different web for warm leads, essentially. Cold calling, keep contacting, keep networking, and eventually your warm lead book will evolve and expand exponentially. We can apply that same perspective to the coronavirus. This is serious. Now, my second point on this controversy is that there's just a lot of gossip going on. No one really knows the whole story. China's covering something up. It started in Wuhan, but now it's a Canadian biological warfare smuggled in from the Chinese. This is going to raise a lot of fear and uncertainty for the economy. I expect all of these stocks to tank, even the ETF. So we shall see in the coming days.
Let's start with taking a look at what so far coronavirus has meant for the global economy and the potential threat that it poses. China, a major economic driver worldwide. There are entire cities being shut down and cordoned off at this time. How serious a threat do you think this is to global markets?
Well, it's serious, but I think it's important as well for us to be measured. The fact is that when we look at China, they were going to see slower growth this year than they've seen in the past several years. So that's a concern to begin with. This will take a certain amount of growth off that as well, so it'll slow things down that much further. The difference between this and the time of SARS is that today, China's role in the global economy is that it generates twice as high a percentage of global GDP as it did back at the time of SARS. So it means then that in terms of demand in China and in terms of China's ability to supply the global economy, the impact is more significant potentially.
What are some of the key
So twice the money is coming into China. Now I looked up the trade statistics. Number one exporter, China, 36. Literally 3 times the amount of the United States. And then look, all of these are Asian countries. The top 10, all of them are Asian, except for the United States. We look further. Importers. Even China is number 2 in imports. These imports are being stalled. Exporters. This is why I mentioned Germany and Italy. They are going to be on hard watch because they have infections already. And guess what? They are number 2 in the European Union. My assumption is, as the coronavirus gets worse, it is going to disrupt the exporting of containers throughout the world. And the containers is where all the products are. It's where all the money is. It's basically GDP in a box. This needs to occur, okay? There are hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that are just waiting to be delivered and waiting to be received. And this coronavirus, as it gets worse, is just not looking good.
Nationals diagnosed. Around the world each day there are new cases. Now more than 5,000 suspected in India. In Hong Kong, 26 cases of the virus have prompted a drastic...
Yo, 5,000 cases in India? This is just brewing, guys. It's just a disaster. Complete shit show.
CNBC, she says, for a long time I thought the market sentiment was so strong that we could overcome a mounting list of economic uncertainty, but the coronavirus is different. It's big. It's going to paralyze China. It's going to cascade throughout the global economy. I want to ask Professor Gwillan, what is your assessment of the kind of economic impact of this epidemic on the global economy?
Well, I think we still don't know because, as you know, many factories that were shut down because of the Chinese Lunar Year celebrations have not restarted production. And I think the biggest thing that the markets want to know is exactly when all of those factories are going to start producing again. So apparently it's going to happen beginning next week. But if those factories, most factories in China, especially in automobiles and electronics, they do not start production again, then I think what we're going to see is a major disruption of companies that put together automobiles or electronics products in many parts of the world. And this is exactly what happened in Japan when there was an earthquake and tsunami, that many Japanese factories had to stop producing. And within a few weeks, there were shortages of parts and components throughout the world. So I think we know what's going to happen. Companies are going to get disrupted unless, of course, factories in China start working again next week.
So basically, a lot of freaking companies are going to miss their numbers Q1.
Mr. Wolf, your assessment of the impact. I mean, the managing director of the IMF has said on Monday, she said that we support China's efforts to respond, including recent fiscal monitoring financial actions. We're confident that China's economy remains resilient. How big of an impact will it have on the global economy, and how resilient do you think the Chinese economy can be, Mr. Wolf?
So I think the Chinese economy has repeatedly proved itself more resilient than particularly its critics generally allow, so I don't expect that to be different. I also don't think that the virus is a Chinese matter. I think it's a global matter, and I also don't think that there's a Chinese economy, right? There is a global economy of which China is a particularly important part, growing into being the largest, already the second largest, and an engine of growth. I think the response to the virus has been far more destructive than the virus. I expect that to continue, and that's very difficult to forecast. What I really mean here is that the lethality of this virus is quite low, and it's actually not as high or higher than all kinds of ailments that afflict all kinds of populations around the world, and so it does seem to have been overblown. My great fear for all the time we've had to discuss this virus is that it would be an excuse and it would power xenophobia, fear of foreigners, and make louder voices against free trade. Some of that has occurred in the U.S. I think most of the rest of the world has taken the higher road. I think if this virus runs its course, it will be looked back on more as a hysterical overreaction than a public health emergency, although it needs to be taken quite seriously. And I am not a virologist, so my opinions on the paths that various pathogens travel is probably less interesting than my relative familiarity with macro international economics.
Yeah, it's
Word, bro. So yeah, I agree. This might cause some xeno shit, and in the future, people don't want to buy Chinese because stigma.
这个传的你那个快，那个没那么多，上次没那么多人。
那次我们也不担心，那次我们老出去玩，这次没。
Not so many people were infected. Guys, these people live in China. These are old timers, definitely over 50. They remember the experience well. They are saying not so many people were infected.
没敢出去玩，因为这次因为出那个传的太厉害了，虽然死人没有上次。
It wasn't just a lack of news, it was a cover-up, as authorities hid the scale of the epidemic. SARS, short for severe acute respiratory syndrome, killed 774 people in 8 months. This time, things are different. The World Health Organization has said China has been more transparent. And the
cover-up happened when SARS occurred. History might repeat itself. You know, China might be doing the same shit.
On the Chinese mainland, the virus has now killed more people than SARS nearly 2 decades ago. It has also infected more than 37,000 people worldwide in over 24 countries. Well, for a closer look, we are now reaching out to Dr. Richard Chabas. He is Ontario's former Chief Medical Officer, also the former Chief of Staff at York Central Hospital at the time of the SARS outbreak. He joins us right now in Toronto. So, Dr. Chabas, thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure.
I want to begin here by asking you what you make of these reports, that the number of dead now surpasses the number of people who died during the SARS epidemic. Is that reason to worry?
Well, I think what it says is that this is a much larger outbreak than the SARS outbreak was. The number of dead is already higher. It will continue to grow, of course, because the outbreak is far from over. But I think also there's a lot of what I find actually quite encouraging news coming out of the outbreak, particularly coming out of China, and with all the caveats about the issues of reliability of the data and biases built into the data. What I find most striking about this outbreak is actually how localized it has remained, how much the 95% of the cases or somewhere in that range have all been in this one province in China. If this were, in fact, a highly infectious disease comparable, let's say, to influenza, we're now 2.5 months at least into the outbreak, it would be far more widespread. It would be across the Chinese continent. It would be expanding elsewhere. We would be looking at this point in time at hundreds of millions of cases and tens of thousands of deaths, and we're not seeing anything remotely like that, which is good news.
So good news that it doesn't seem to be as infectious as SARS. But, you know, when you look at the number of patients who've actually fully recovered, to my understanding, that still remains low. Does that say anything to you?
Well, let's be clear. It's more infectious than SARS. SARS was not at all a highly infectious disease. This is a more infectious disease. But on the other hand, it appears to have a substantially lower case fatality rate. It seems to be substantially less virulent than SARS was. So we have to follow the data very, very, very carefully. But I think trying to put all of this in context, trying to see the big picture, it's not spreading rapidly. There's some indication that the case rate in Hubei province, which is where it's centered, is actually peaking, which is very good news. And it doesn't seem to be taking substantial root elsewhere. We have a huge advantage over our efforts with SARS 15 years ago because we now have rapid diagnostic testing. We really didn't have any diagnostic testing for SARS. It was all clinical work. Now we have rapid diagnostic testing, which should allow us to identify cases. And when cases appear elsewhere, as they have, they've appeared in more than 20 countries, including Canada. But because we can identify them, because we can then isolate the cases and put a cordon of observation around the cases, we should be able to control this. So I am cautiously optimistic about what's going on.
Okay, cautiously optimistic. Of course, we're going to keep following it. And
So this is the latest.
Confirms 3 new coronavirus cases. It brings the total in the nation to 27. The death toll in China hits 908. The number of confirmed infections there at 40,171.
Well, Mark, as of this morning, the death toll in China is over 900, with 97 deaths recorded in the past 24 hours. This is the first time there have been more than 90 recorded deaths in a single day. 91 out of the 97 deaths come from the Hubei province, the epicenter of the outbreak. There were also some 3,000 more confirmed cases, bringing the number of confirmed infections to more than 40,000. On a brighter note, the number of new cases has stabilized in recent days. Other areas of China, except for the Hubei province, have seen a downturn in the number of newly confirmed cases for the past 5 days in a row. New cases across the rest of China were reportedly staying at some 500 a day as of Friday. The most recent data from China's National Health Commission also shows new cases as of Sunday stand at some 300. Meanwhile, anxiety rises as millions of Chinese are set to return home following the end of the Lunar New Year holiday, which was extended to February 9th.
Well, let's hope we can trust those numbers as to whether they are telling us the real scale of the crisis there. This cruise ship, the Diamond Princess, docked at the port of Yokohama.
Yes, 6 more people on the cruise ship that has been quarantined for nearly a week have tested positive for the novel coronavirus. According to Kyodo News, 6 people were added to the confirmed cases of the Diamond Princess, 5 of which are crew members. This brings the total number of confirmed cases on the vessel to 70. About 3,700 people have been quarantined since last Monday after it was learned that a passenger who disembarked in Hong Kong on January 25th had been infected. The Japanese government announced on Sunday it would test all passengers and crew members on the ship. Previously, it had planned to test only those necessary. Japan vowed full support to aid those quarantined who are...
All right, last video we got to go over. First American, unfortunately, dies.
This woman apparently being taken against her will by China's newly deployed quarantine squads. A man also pulled from the apartment, forcibly taken down the stairs. Across China, disturbing videos on social media appear to show the extreme measures taken to control the outbreak. Here, workers in hazmat suits detain a young couple, putting them into a metal box. A child's voice asks why. The adult answers because they're sick. And you can hear the screams. Earlier this week, the government in Wuhan released an edict. Round up suspected coronavirus cases, and if the person refuses to cooperate, it said, public security shall enforce.
I can tell you that for any Chinese citizens watching those videos is that, number one, they will not want to come into communication or contact with health authorities.
As the Chinese government scrambles to contain the virus, the U.S. Embassy in Beijing confirms the first American death, a 60-year-old who died in Wuhan. Meanwhile, flights carrying more Americans from Wuhan arrived in the U.S. last night, and passengers are quarantined at military bases in California, Texas, and Nebraska. The State Department says a total of 800 Americans have been evacuated from the city so far, and no additional flights are planned. The number of coronavirus cases on board the Diamond Princess continues to rise.
Incrementally getting more terrifying.
And I'm sure a lot of people are getting more terrified day by day. So, last thing we got to go over is some controversial news. The death toll is over 50,000 deaths. From exiled Chinese businessman Guo Wengui recently revealed leaks from Wuhan crematoriums. So, basically, he's a billionaire, exiled from China. If we scroll to the bottom, he was charged for rape, bribery, kidnapping, money laundering, and fraud, but the U.S. has declined to extradite him. He's a whistleblower. He says 1.5 million cases and 50,000 deaths because the crematoriums are running overtime. 24/7. All ovens are on. 100 body bags a day. They just have to keep burning these bodies. So there's already been some sketchy stuff that's been happening. They tried to cover up Dr. Lee when he died. First, he died. And then there was outcry. A lot of upset people. And then he was alive. and then he was dead again. China has been constantly censoring stuff on TikTok, on social media. They are constantly covering stuff up. They covered up SARS for a long time. That's why it was a big deal. 8 months to brew and go viral. This coronavirus has not even been going on for 2 months. And I honestly think its advantage as a virus is higher infections. Who cares about the deaths? If you can infect 500,000 people, then you're going to kill more people than a virus that is more lethal. We are in critical condition. The global economy should be on hard watch. You do not want to get caught in the typhoon. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Appreciate you guys for liking the video. It really helps my channel grow. I will see you guys next video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell because I'm clearly making these videos quite frequently. Peace out.